When Buckingham Palace hit send, the royal world flipped. Why did Prince Edward, Mr. Restraint, torch Queen Camilla's flagship European tour and hand the spotlight to Princess Catherine? In the next few minutes, you'll learn the trigger no one saw coming, the confidential dossier that forced Edward's hand, the late-night call that broke Charles's heart, and how Catherine became the crown's only safe bet. We'll unpack who actually wields power inside the palace right now, why Camilla's silence isn't peace but strategy, and the one move that could redraw the royal order before the year is out. If you think this was scheduling drama, you're not ready for the money trail, the back-channel politics, and the quiet alliance that just rewired the monarchy. Stay with me. By the end, you'll know exactly why this decision happened, who pushed it through, and what it means for the throne's future. It started before dawn with a line no one expected to read. The European tour is cancelled. In an instant, months of planning evaporated, itineraries, motorcades, banquets, the choreography of a soft power campaign meant to cement Camilla as the bedrock of the new reign. The press called it a restructure. Insiders called it a reckoning. Because behind that bland sentence was a man who rarely raises his voice and almost never raises a hand, Prince Edward. Calm, exact, unmovable. If you're asking what changed, the answer is everything. The first tremor was the paperwork that landed on Edward's desk with a stamp only used when reputations are on the line. Restricted circulation. He expected logistics. He found landmines. Private intermediaries inserted into state meetings. Sponsorship offers courting proximity to the crown. Engagements arranged outside the palace's diplomatic channels. Nothing illegal on its face, everything dangerous in practice. The monarchy survives on trust. If that blurs the whole fabric phrase, he didn't posture. He verified. He pulled in the last of his mother's old guard, the quiet professionals who could sniff out spin at 100 paces. They cross-checked dates, names, money. Threads connected where they shouldn't. Optics that could detonate halfway through a photo op in a European capital. Edward heard his mother's creed in his ear, duty over advantage. And for the first time in years, he acted like the son who inherited her instincts, not her throne. That's when the phone rang at an hour that makes even kings feel human. Charles listened. That's what older brothers do when younger brothers arrive with proof you wish wasn't true. Edward didn't plead. He prosecuted. This isn't about Camilla, he said. It's about the crown. He laid out the Foreign Office warnings, the headlines that would write themselves, the chaos a single leaked email could unleash. Silence on the other end of the line wasn't disagreement, it was heartbreak. Because Charles knew that protecting the institution might mean wounding the woman who had stood beside him through decades of storm. Then came the pivot that turned crisis into strategy. The replacement. Not a snub, a solution. Catherine. Composure that doesn't crack. Dignity that doesn't lecture. A public record so unblemished critics sound petty, just trying. Let her lead this one, Edward said. The world still believes in her. On the other end of the line, a pen scratched paper. Bureaucracy completed what conviction began. BY sunrise. Phones lit up. Commentators called it overdue. Diplomats called it relief. The public called it common sense. And across a city that measures time and ceremony, a different clock began to tick. The one inside Clarence's house. Camilla read the statement twice. Then a third time. Cancellation. Replacement. Catherine. In politics, humiliation isn't the loud moment. It's the quiet one where you realize the narrative moved without you. The staff heard raised voices, yes, but what matters is what she felt. Outflanked. Not by tabloids. By family. Here's why the reaction outside the gates was so swift. For years, the monarchy has been playing defense. Scandals, health scares, questions of relevance. Catherine is the rare variable that flips the script. She doesn't need applause to look steady. She doesn't need a headline to look modern. She just has to show up, mean it, and leave the room calmer than she found it. That isn't glamour. That's credibility. And credibility is the only currency that still spends abroad. Inside, the switch hurt. This wasn't just logistics. It was a boundary line drawn in fountain pen ink. Edward and Sophie have lived a long time in the monarchy's second paragraph. Reliable, dutiful, rarely first call. But service without vanity doesn't stay invisible forever. Over the last decade, they built a record: military patronage, international trust building, the kind of work that doesn't trend yet never backfires. When push came to shove, that resume weighed more than any headline machine ever could. If you're wondering whether Camilla saw it coming, listen closely to the quiet. Silence can be strategy. Her first move wasn't public. It was political. Friends in Parliament murmured about overreach. Anonymous sources questioned Edward's authority. The word ambition got stapled to the word interference, and suddenly the conversation wasn't about risk management. It was about power. That's how you fight inside a family that never admits it fights. You redefine the words until your opponent looks like the problem, but Edward didn't engage in a firefight. He went institutional. He convened the council tasked with protecting the crown's constitutional spine. He laid out the dossier, the leaks, the risks. He asked for clarity, not revenge. The directive that returned to his desk did what palace gossip never can. It settled the field. Foreign engagements would route through the proper channels. Oversight would be tightened. Tours are not vanity projects. They are national policy in dress clothes. Message sent. While the press sketched Catherine as savior and Camilla as spurned, the reality was more complicated and far more human. Catherine stepped in without victory laps. Her first words were about service, not spotlight. She talked continuity, not conquest. The language was Elizabethan on purpose, duty without drama, stability without self-regard. Ambassadors noticed. They always do. Authority without arrogance is rare, and it translates in every language. If you think that calmed the waters, you haven't watched court politics long enough. Power abhors a vacuum, and humiliation seeks allies. Meetings were held. Lists were rewritten. Favors called in. But a palace runs on morale as much as mandate, and morale was not on Camilla's side. Staff migrate toward weather that isn't lightning. Offices asked for reassignments. Doors that once opened on the first knock began answering after the third. You cannot leak your way out of fatigue. And then, the moment that cut through the fog, a private confrontation that will never be printed in court circulars and will be remembered in every corridor anyway. Edward, Camilla, Catherine. No cameras. No advisors. No spin. Edward spoke first because someone had to. Service, not self-interest. The crown belongs to the nation, not to any of us. Camilla answered because pride does not sit quietly. You turned them against me. Not a scream. A verdict. Catherine didn't counter. She reframed. We serve the same crown. The world must see unity, not division. You can't feel a room through a screen, but you can read an outcome. Camilla agreed to step back from foreign tours. Not a resignation. A recalibration. A sentence that sounds small until you remember how power is expressed in monarchies. Who speaks for the nation abroad speaks for the brand at home. The torch didn't fall. It was handed, carefully, painfully, undeniably, as what changes tomorrow morning? First, discipline. Tours will be what they're meant to be again, diplomacy in motion, not influence with better lighting. Second, faces. Catherine becomes the default envoy not because she is perfect, but because she is predictable in the best possible way. Third, lanes. Edward just moved from reliable spare to institutional guardian. You'll hear his name less and feel his hand more. What about Charles? He is the man in the middle, the monarch in the cross-press of love and legacy. He didn't choose a side. He chose a standard. He signed to protect the only thing bigger than any person in that family, the crown's credibility. It will cost him. Every real decision does, and Camilla? Do not mistake retreat for defeat. She is seasoned, politically fluent, and surrounded by people who prefer winning to sulking. Expect a rebrand toward domestic stewardship, heritage, literacy, Commonwealth culture, arenas where she can project stability without tripping diplomatic tripwires. Expect fewer high-gloss tours and more high-yield patronage. Expect selective visibility.